Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. Goldbelly ships Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garden's famous cakes. So, if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's goldbelly.com, promo code GIFT.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Breaking news. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. We have breaking news. The Federal Reserve has cut interest rates 1/4 point. We are awaiting Jerome Powell to take the stage and make his announcement of why they're cutting interest rates. Markets responding enthusiastically as a result. It is happening right now. The Federal Reserve cutting interest rates 1/4 point. Now, here's the most interesting aspect of this is they're doing so flying blind. What do I mean by that? The government's closed, so they can't get economic data from the Department of Commerce or the Department of Labor. They're having a gut check. But that gut check comes after, I believe, Walmart, Amazon, UPS, Carter's, and General Motors, Ford, and a good group, large group of businesses have announced layoffs. A growing number of companies are announcing layoffs. The Federal Reserve has a dual mandate. The dual mandate of the Federal Reserve is to keep inflation in check and low, and also to keep employment maximized or high. Now, the problem here is that inflation is still higher than the Federal Reserve wants. We know from the Consumer Price Index, it's 3% at least. And that's higher than the Fed wants. And we now also know that according to private checks from businesses, not public because they're closed, the Federal Reserve is, they're not only flying blind on data, but they know that wages are not keeping up with inflation right now. And they're a little bit concerned that cutting interest rates could stimulate more inflation. And so, again, wages go up, but not as fast as inflation. And so you actually, even though your wages are going up, you become poorer because things get more expensive. They outpace the cost of things going up, outpace your wage growth. At the same time, though, businesses are laying people off. There have been a massive number of businesses laying people off. And the tell to the Fed that there is underlying weakness in the economy is that while you have this data center AI surge, as I mentioned to you earlier in the show, 85% of the companies on the S&P closed lower yesterday, but the S&P still went up because of the dominance of AI right now. There's a Wall Street Journal story that tens of thousands of white-collar jobs are vanishing as AI is starting to bite companies. The nation's largest employers have a new message for office workers: help not wanted. Amazon said it would cut 14,000 jobs with plans to eliminate 10% of the white-collar workforce. UPS said Tuesday it's reduced its management workforce by 14,000 positions over 22 months, days after the retailer Target said it would cut 1,800 corporate jobs. Earlier in October, white-collar workers from companies including Rivian Automotive, Molson Coors, Booz Allen Hamilton, and General Motors received pink slips or learned they would come soon. Adds up tens of thousands of newly laid off white-collar workers in America are entering a stagnant job market with no place for them. At 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday, Kelly Williamson woke up to an alarming text from her employer, Amazon's Whole Foods Market, urging her to check her email. Review ASAP and stay home from work today, the message said. Williamson's role on the asset protection team was being eliminated. The badge and laptop for the 55-year-old from Austin, Texas, was deactivated. She was given 90 days to look for another job at the company. She said her personal belongings are being mailed to her. That's kind of a cruel way to do it, but it's happening more and more. I got to tell you, while all of this is happening, I actually think AI is both underrated and overrated. I think of what a lot of people are claiming AI is going to do, it's not. And I actually don't think that AI is going to be a massive job eliminator in some cases. It will, certainly in some sectors, but then there will be jobs hired for AI. Like I've been telling my kids now, you gotta prepare for the AI world. And there are certain creative aspects of jobs now that AI is never going to be able to replicate. Like you're never going to have an AI talk radio show host, I don't think. And I mean, how could you to process the news and do what I do? I think I'm pretty AI proof. Now, the people who work for me are not AI proof. I mean, I could fire members of my team tomorrow and let AI do the video editing and things like that and not get lip from them and not have to pay them salaries. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's not a bad idea, but nonetheless, I digress. But your entry-level jobs, white-collar jobs, are going to have problems, perhaps. However, the question then becomes, where do you go to get the workers with experience if you haven't hired the workers for the entry-level jobs? The answer that my kids are getting from college admissions counselors and college counselors is you're going to have to go one step up. So instead of a single major, get a double major. Maybe get your master's degree and you go in at a higher level. And colleges and universities are going to have more technical capacity to not just give you knowledge, but also train you. And that is going to matter. It's going to matter greatly to a lot of people that you have more advanced training to be able to leapfrog if the entry-level jobs are now being taken by AI. And now the Federal Reserve has this complicated dual mandate. It's got to maximize its employment for the country. It's got to minimize inflation. How do you minimize inflation and maximize employment when you have this divergent path that AI is helping cause in the country? It becomes a harder thing. And what's even more difficult is right now the Fed is flying blind with the government closed and it can't get data. We do have some information, though. We do know that Donald Trump's latest pick for the Federal Reserve, Stephen Mirren, dissented. He wanted an even bigger rate cut, and we know that a Biden appointee to the Federal Reserve wanted no rate cuts. I want to jump over to Rick Santelli at CNBC just very quickly. He's talking right now as everybody awaits Jerome Powell coming out to the camera.
When they actually cut rates is when the dollar index made its multi-year low. So the point here is we're all talking about the Fed and cutting rates. It certainly looks like December's priced in, and Jim Carrot's probably right. Probably get one more next year. But the issue is we're all looking towards the yield curve and especially thinking about housing and the rest of the curve. But the rest of the curve is bucking the trend. We've had a cumulative 50 basis points, and basically the interest rate markets are unchanged. And since the October 1st shutdown of the government, the yield curve is flattening, which tells me there's nervousness that it's negatively affecting the economy. Back to you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been telling you, and to some degree, I've been a Cassandra here because, you know, there's actually polling data out that a growing number of Americans feel more optimistic about the economy. And that to me is always a warning sign, by the way. Just if you're a longtime listener of this here program, I'm not per se a contrarian. In fact, I don't like professional contrarians, and I think there's a growing number of people on the right who like to play contrarians. But I do, as a habit, tend to be more cautious. When I see everyone headed in a direction, I tend to stay put. Not being contrary and turning and going the other direction, but I tend to slow down. When everybody is heading towards the cliff, I tend to pause. And when I see everybody saying, no, the economy looks like it's doing okay right now, I tend to say, wait a second, there are underlying problems. And right now it does actually look like, when you look at the yield rate and everything else with treasuries and all, that more and more professionals who pay attention to these things are like, there are some underlying problems. Meanwhile, the average Americans right now are thinking, it looks like things are turning good. The Fed just cut rates. That must be a good thing. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know that it is. I'm a little bit concerned where we are right now. And here's what we know. The Federal Reserve is signaling that there will be another interest rate cut. That probably in December, the Federal Reserve is going to cut another quarter point. And we also may see another quarter point next year at some point. This is the key point analysis from Jeff Cox at CNBC. By a 10-2 vote, the Central Bank's Federal Open Markets Committee lowered its benchmark overnight borrowing rate to a range of 3.75 to 4%. In addition to the rate move, the Fed announced that it would be ending the reduction of its asset purchases, a process known as quantitative tightening, on December 1st. The statement reiterated concerns that policymakers have over the labor market, saying the downside risks to employment rose in recent months. Now, what does that mean? It means the Federal Reserve is far more concerned about jobs right now than they are inflation. Stephen Mirren cast a dissenting vote, preferring the Fed move more quickly with a half-point cut. Kansas City Fed President Jeffrey Schmidt joined Mirren in dissenting, but for the opposite reason. He wanted the Fed not to cut anything at all. The rate also sets a benchmark for a variety of consumer products such as auto loans, mortgages, and credit cards. The reduction came even though the Fed essentially has been flying blind on economic data. Other than the consumer price index last week, the government has suspended all data collection and reporting, meaning such key measures as non-farm payroll, retail sales, and a plethora of other macro data is unavailable. In the post-meeting statement, the committee acknowledged the uncertainty accompanying the lack of data, qualifying the way it categorized broad economic conditions. In the statement, the Federal Reserve said, available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a moderate pace. Job gains have slowed this year, and the unemployment rate has edged up but remained low through August. More recent indicators are consistent with these developments. Inflation has moved up since earlier in the year and remains somewhat elevated. Each of those characterizations represented tweaks from the September statement. The most significant change was the view of the broader economic activity. In September, the Open Markets Committee said activity had moderated. So, where does all of this stand? Well, for you and me, it means auto loan rates go down, credit card rates go down, mortgage rates begin to go down. That means it opens more buyers up to being able to buy into houses and get cars. And it means people with credit card debt who carry over their payments each month, which you should not do, will see some benefit there. That will provide extra economy into the economy. It'll help businesses tremendously with loans for businesses and things like that. It will add more money to the economy, and it should stimulate economic activity. Now, the downside there is that with inflation at 3%, it could cause inflation to go up as well. And I think that we're probably going to get to a point as we head into November, if the government doesn't reopen shortly after November 1st, we're going to start seeing people in Wall Street sounding alarms for economic fallout. Why? Because small businesses that depend on government loans, particularly small businesses and minority-owned businesses that get government money to get them off the ground and get started, those are loans that have to be paid back. They're not getting those loans to begin with. Those businesses are going to start collapsing very soon if the government doesn't reopen. They have a limited runway. Cutting interest rates will help with the limited runway. It'll add some length to the runway for these small businesses, but they're still going to have a very hard time. That's where we are right now with this economic news. The Federal Reserve is cutting quarter point interest rates. The markets are responding accordingly, headed in positive direction on the news. They assumed this was going to happen. The markets are actually cheering on the idea that we probably are going to get one more quarter point interest rate cut at the end of this year. And again, that will help stimulate the economy. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here, 877-973-7425. If you're just tuning in, we got the big breaking news everyone's been expecting. That is interest rates cut a quarter point. Now, how does that affect you as a practical matter? What the Federal Reserve does is it doesn't lend you money. It's the bank's lender. And so when the Federal Reserve charges interest to a bank, So a bank goes to the Federal Reserve. It gets money from the Federal Reserve to put into the public banking system. It pays an interest rate, and that is this rate that the Fed controls. And now it's cut it by a quarter point. So banks can now lend you the money, and they can charge you a lower interest rate and still maintain their profit. So the Federal Reserve, let's say, loans them money at 3% interest. The banks then charge you 5% interest if you got good credit, 8% interest if you got bad credit. That difference is their profit that they're lending money. Banks don't actually make a lot of money by you putting money in bank accounts with banks. They make their money by doing loans and charging interest and things like that. And this helps banks, and this makes it cheaper for you to get a loan for your business, for your home, to buy a car, things like that. Now, you should know the president is saying that Jerome Powell is competing to be the worst chairman of the Federal Reserve in history. He is unhappy and wanted a higher interest rate cut, but is now resigned to the fact he can't replace the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And next year, we'll get to pick his Federal Reserve chairman. He's actually started auditioning for the new Federal Reserve Chairman. Jerome Powell will be out the door. We're still a little bit concerned. Well, listen to me, good Lord. I, your host, but also the government, is still a little bit concerned about the direction of the employment rate in the country. I would be remiss, by the way, while I'm doing this. I've got my TV up and I'm watching. I'm waiting for Jerome Powell because I'd like to get some of his press conference. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I'm seeing the images come out of Jamaica, and it is awful. It is disaster. I was told yesterday that people at resorts were telling people to use permanent markers to write their names and family contact information on themselves in case bodies needed to be identified. The death toll in Jamaica that we're just getting word of this afternoon from Jamaican authorities is pretty significant from Hurricane Melissa rolling through. So be in prayers for those people. If you have wiggle room and charitable contributions you can make, consider sending some to the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and others to help people down there who have just been devastated. Now, while we're waiting for Jerome Powell, we need to step out. Before we do, I want to tell you about Swiss America. Look, interest rates are going down, but there are still some financially struggling banks out there, and you've got the secret war on cash going on. Swiss America wants to help you. They want to help you protect your hard-earned assets. They want to help you with your retirement. You can get their report, The Secret War on Cash, completely free by calling or texting 800-289-2646. The All-Out War on Cash includes digital forms of currency. It's spreading. Read The Secret War on Cash report. You get it by mentioning Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. But let Swiss America help you. All you do is text 800-289-2646, mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, and they'll send you the report. Just follow the link, get the report, or go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. Today, remember that message and data rates may apply. Let Swiss America educate you and help you. When we come back, I'll take your phone calls. We're awaiting Jerome Powell. He's going to get precedence, but stick around.
Hey guys, finding the perfect gift for the food lover in your life is easy. Thanks to Goldbelly. Goldbelly ships America's most iconic foods straight from world-famous restaurants right to your door. So if you want to treat someone to Joe's Stone Crab from Miami, Franklin Barbecue from Texas, or desserts from famous foodies like Ina Garten or Martha Stewart, Goldbelly has you covered. Just go to goldbelly.com and for a limited time, get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's promo code GIFT.
Well, this is why they pay me the big bucks to jockey all of this around. We've got Jerome Powell speaking, but we just got this off Air Force One from the President of the United States.
Sir, Speaker Johnson says that he told you that there's no time to amend the Constitution to allow you to serve a third term. Is that an accurate representation of the Constitution?
I don't want to even talk about that because, they said prices are way down. Everything's way down. Beef is a little bit high. We're going to get beef down too. But prices are down and the economy's up. The only thing that's not down is the stock prices. And 401ks are through the roof. Everyone's 401ks hitting records. So we have the greatest economy we've ever had. I have my highest poll numbers that I've ever had. And, you know, based on what I read, I guess I'm not allowed to run. So we'll see what happens.
Johnson says you're trolling when you talk about a third term. Are you trolling or are you serious?
I don't think he said that. I don't think he just said term, but it's a very interesting thing. I have the best numbers for any president in many years, any president. And I would say that if you read it, it's pretty clear. I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad.
If you read it, the 22nd Amendment, that it's pretty clear. I'm not allowed to run. That's too bad. The president now, having spun the Democrats up for multiple days, now saying that he can't run. Jerome Powell now speaking.
December 1. Our long-stated plan has been to stop balance sheet runoff when reserves are somewhat above the level we judge consistent with ample reserve conditions. Signs have clearly emerged that we have reached that standard. In money markets, repo rates have moved up relative to our administered rates, and we have seen more notable pressures on selected dates, along with more use of our standing repo facility. In addition, the effective federal funds rate has begun to move up relative to the rate of interest on reserve balances. These developments are what we expected to see as the size of our balance sheet declined and warrant today's decision to cease runoff. Over the 3.5 years that we've been shrinking our balance sheet, our securities holdings have declined by $2.2 trillion.
Okay, I'm going to leave him there because he's moved on from interest rates and we'll all fall asleep if we keep listening to him. Bottom line, though, interest rates going down. They think they're going to cut it one more time, quarter point this year at Christmas time. We will see where things go. Now, waiting very patiently on the phone is Ken. Welcome to the show, sir. Thanks for sticking with me.
It's okay, Eric. I love talking to you a few times a year. We disagree on most things, but I love the fact that somebody can call and have a discussion. And what really resonated with me today, earlier in the show, you talked about the shutdown not being a Democrat shutdown or a Republican shutdown. It's a shutdown by both sides. And I started voting 50 years ago, and I can remember a lot of this. There's no leadership going on right now in the Congress or the Senate. And when, in fact, did the word compromise become a 4-letter word? That's all I want to know. Everything is about winning and losing, nothing about compromise. I'm surprised these guys up there aren't all divorced, because if they act like they act in Congress and Senate, when they get home, I'm sure their wives or their husbands would want to divorce them because they have to win or lose. The people suffering are the American citizens. There's no leadership to get these guys at a table and say, you know what, guys, you're not going to get everything you want. We're not going to get everything we want, but we serve the citizens of this country. And I'm sick and I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of the president who should tell the people in his party who will do anything he says to sit down and get a deal done.
Well,
he has no idea what this economy is about.
Yeah, Ken, I understand where you're coming from, but here's my problem. And it's that the Democrats go back to Barack Obama being president. They've always maintained, and the National Press Corps has always maintained, and the Republican leadership has always maintained, that you got to pass a clean resolution. You can't hold the government hostage, and so it would be bad to give in to the people who shut down the government. So every time Republicans attempted to shut down the government, they actually were way more unified than the Democrats are with the message. But the position of the Democrats was reopen the government and then we'll negotiate. And in fact, that is what happened every time. And now this time it's the Democrats who said, you got to give us what we want or we're going to shut down the government. And the Republicans said, no, we're going to use Chuck Schumer's own resolution that Chuck Schumer himself drafted. And we're going to demand, just as you always demanded to us, reopen the government and then we'll negotiate. And we will negotiate and we will put what you want to a vote, but you got to reopen the government first. And now suddenly the Democrats are like, look, I know we've said this forever, but this time it's different. How is it different? Banana jamma pants. What? Banana Gemma pits. What does that mean? Banana Gemma pits. It doesn't make any sense at all. No, it doesn't. Because the Democrats now have staked out a position antithetical to every position the Democrats have ever had in office when there was a government shutdown. So the Democrats are the ones who need to vote for a clean continuing resolution because it's Chuck Schumer's resolution that he wrote when Joe Biden was president that the Republicans are asking the Democrats to vote for. And by the way, they have always been totally fine voting for that resolution. That's all I'm saying. It's time for the Democrats to vote as they have insisted the Republicans always vote. And I would tell the Republicans, so many of your voters are convinced you're going to cave. You can't cave. Now, I will tell you during the show today, because I wrote a piece this morning on this. You text Eric to 33777. You can get it. You subscribe. You see the morning piece. The headline was Republicans Don't Go Wobbly. And I have heard now from about a half dozen members of the United States Senate on the Republican side saying, trust me, we are not going wobbly at all. We will not cave. They will open with a clean resolution or else. And that's encouraging to me. Very encouraging to me. Because that's what they need to do. There needs to be the clean resolution. It's what the Democrats have always demanded. So do it. Democrats, do it. I want to shift to something, and I don't want to be argumentative or combative with you. My job is oftentimes to tell the truth. At times, people don't want to hear the truth. I have gotten a lot of emails today, people asking why I wasn't talking about this topic, and I told them I'm going to get to it at the end of the show. And here we have arrived at the moment that I tell you that the Otto Pin story is a big story that will amount to nothing. And both parties spin up stories that are designed to provoke the base of the parties. And the Otto Pin story and the investigation going on by Congress is one of those stories. And people on my side will get mad at me for saying this, and they will insist you can invalidate all of Joe Biden's presidency, and you can't. I know you can't do it because I've already researched the law on this. And the most famous memo on the use of the Otto Pin was written by a man you all know as Justice Sam Alito. When he was working for the Department of Justice, he was asked about the Otto Pin for purposes of pardons. And Sam Alito concluded that it was perfectly consistent, provided, however, that the individual whose name was on the paper, that is the President of the United States, consented to the use of the Otto Pin. Now, wait, you say, how can a dementia patient consent? And you're right, but you're also wrong. Who in the Biden White House is going to come forward and say Joe Biden had no idea what he was doing? Anybody? Who's going to come forward? His doctor took the Fifth Amendment before Congress. Most of the people have taken the Fifth Amendment. You can't use that against them. You can't use the Fifth Amendment against them and say this is proof. You're not capable of doing that. You're not allowed to under American constitutional law. So when the Republicans try to invalidate the executive orders of the Biden administration or the pardons by the Biden administration, and they go to court and they say the Otto Pin was used, well, the prevailing legal standard set by Sam Alito, who's now in the Supreme Court, in the executive branch, when he was a lawyer for the executive branch, was that as long as consent was given, the Otto Pin can be used. Now, why? Just so you understand his logic. Back in the day, before we were a country, we were colonies. And we were colonies to a particular country that had a king. And to have binding law and rules of the king in that country, the king's seal had to be affixed to documents. The king very rarely affixed his seal to the documents of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and before that, England. The king delegated others to affix the seal for him. And it was the seal that mattered, not the king doing it himself. So long as the king consented to the seal being placed on the document was binding. Our country descends from that. You hear people refer to the common law. That's what they mean, the common law. And our Supreme Court looks back to history of the English common law period before we were a country to see how these things are done. And Sam Alito in the 1980s was asked this question as a lawyer for the Justice Department and said that there is no difference between the auto pin now and the king's seal then. And so long as the president consents and says use the auto pin, it's the signature that matters and the consent that matters, not who puts the signature on the paper. In the same way, if you're depositing a check and you ask your wife to sign your name on the back of the check and you do the deposit and the bank accepts the deposit and someone comes along later and says, no, you can't take that check because that's not really a signature. And you say, I asked my wife to put my signature down. Well, it's your mark, and you're bound under the commercial laws of the United States. If you sign an X instead of your signature, but you did it, it may not be your signature, but it is your mark, and therefore you're bound. In the same way, if you delegate to someone to put your mark on a piece of paper, you have delegated. You haven't signed a power of attorney, but you've told them to do it. You consented to them doing it for you. You're bound by it. And that's the way this is going to work out. And the people doing this in Congress know it. The Biden administration team knows it. The only people who do not know it are the American people who are being whipped into a frenzy by Republican members of Congress. For what purpose? Money. Money. You're going to fundraise for those people, aren't you? You're going to write them checks for their campaign accounts, aren't you? Because they're doing the busy, dirty work of exposing Biden corruption. Somebody's got to do it. They're the ones doing it. And you're going to write them checks. And they're going to sow in your mind the idea that everything Joe Biden did was illegitimate. And the poison here is this. They're not going to undo the things Joe Biden did, except by executive order, which Donald Trump has already done. But no law signed by Joe Biden is suddenly going to be invalid. No judge appointed by Joe Biden is suddenly going to be unappointed. No pardon granted by Joe Biden is suddenly going to be taken away. That's not going to happen. But you will write checks to the Republicans in the House of Representatives who are exposing what you believe to be an injustice, and that's the whole purpose of the investigation. No law is going to be passed by Congress invalidating the auto pin. They're not going to do it. They can't get it through the Senate. You got to have 60 votes. The filibuster shuts it down. But they can campaign on the fact that they pushed for this law and demand money from you in the form of campaign contributions. And you can be whipped into a frenzy about the illegitimacy of the Biden presidency. And we will have a new, you've got those people right now who go out and they claim they're not really citizens of the United States. And they say they don't have to pay taxes and stuff. We can have a new generation of kooks out there who say, well, Joe Biden signed this law with the auto pin. This law is not valid. Therefore, I'm not going to pay this tax. And you will be forced to pay the tax or go to jail. And you will go to jail insisting it is unjust, and it will work its way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will say you had to do it because the president signed it into law, and you will say, but it wasn't him, it was the auto pin, and the Supreme Court, led by Samuel Alito, will say, we don't care. And you will say, how high does the conspiracy go? It goes all the way to the top when you get before God Almighty himself, and he asks you, why were you an idiot in that lifetime? Hello, America. It is Eric Erickson here. Glad to have you with me. Just one programming note for everybody. I'm going to be gone on Friday now. My dad is in the hospital in Louisiana, so I need to go over and check on him. They're getting some MRI results back on a spot on his kidney and all that. It's fun times. Growing old, I guess, kind of sucks. I guess it does. He's in good spirits. He's turned the corner. They've been treating him for an infection. I'm going to go over and check on him and my mom. And then next Friday, I'm flying to Las Vegas. It's a work trip. It's not a fun. I mean, I'm going to have fun, but this Friday was unexpected. I don't like to take days off work. Everybody tells me I can take off work, but I actually just really like my job and prefer being here. But I love my family, and I hadn't been able to go see my parents, and my dad's birthday is going to be next week when I'm traveling. So I figure this is a perfect time to go over and check on them. I will be back Monday. So I'll be here tomorrow, gone Friday, back on Monday, and in Louisiana over the weekend. Maybe I'll see you around Baton Rouge. I don't think I'm going to be able to get over to Lafayette, but nonetheless, it should be a good time. Now, we've got Jerome Powell. He's still speaking, by the way, and the reporters in the room are still awake, which is the most amazing thing, that they are still awake with him speaking. He's answering questions from the press. What he does say is that layoffs right now are low, but there is some underlying data for weakness in the job market, which is why they decided to cut a quarter point. I at some point, I may need to do this tomorrow. I may need to spend a little more time on AI because I got some real thoughts on AI because I'm using it more. I've got some real frustrations with it, and I don't think it's all it's cracked up to be. And so the weird thing is, like, I can see that there are people who are not getting hired because of AI, but I've talked to a number of friends of mine who are in major technology companies and the like. And they're actually hiring people because of AI, because AI is making them more efficient. They can get more work done, so they're hiring people to take on new clients. And so it's a wild dynamic that I think I think the media might be getting wrong, much as they did the dot-com bubble of the 90s. Maybe I'll get into that tomorrow. Right now, though, speaking of computers, let me tell you about Vision Computer. If you want to actually deal with real people instead of AI chatbots, well, Vision is right for you. If you need your computers managed by a company, you can't afford an in-house IT guy, Vision can do managed IT for you, $199 a computer, maybe a little less if you say Eric Erickson sent you. They can do it for your company. So you're a small business, you can't afford an in-house IT guy. Vision can take care of it. Your employees get a phone number. They call 15 seconds or less. They get the answer. Vision can even remote in and help you with email. They can help you with printer support. You name it. Call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Tell them Eric sent you. See if they can save you some money. Here's the thing. A lot of managed IT services, you've got to file an email ticket or you got to do an AI chatbot to try to get answers. With Vision, you pick up the phone, you call a number, you talk to a live human being who knows computers, and they can give you the answer. Give them a call today. See if they can save you some money. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com.
Hey guys, finding the perfect gift for the food lover in your life is easy. Thanks to Goldbelly. Goldbelly ships America's most iconic foods straight from world-famous restaurants right to your door. So if you want to treat someone to Joe's Stone Crab from Miami, Franklin Barbecue from Texas, or desserts from famous foodies like Ina Garten or Martha Stewart, Goldbelly has you covered. Just go to goldbelly.com and for a limited time, get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's promo code GIFT.